Good afternoon. How are you today? Yes, we're bundled up today because it's pretty chilly here. And I don't really like hats, but I like how they keep the heat inside of me. This is a day that's bittersweet for many who experienced JFK. I was a freshman in high school, and I was going to Latin class. Jesuits are big on that. And I went to Fordham Prep because I wanted to be Johnny Weissmuller, and you got to use the university pool. But one day I saw everybody going into the gymnasium, and I still had time to get to class. So I elbowed my way past all these other people, and there was like a big Klieg light coming from the left to the right. And I heard this young Boston accented man telling a crowd of mostly first generation college, Irish, Italian, Polish, that they had to make a difference. And that young man was Jack Kennedy, who was 1960, and he was running for president. And I had passed out some literature for local politicians, but I went back to my office in a reverie. But by the 1963, he'd been elected president. He talked about going to the moon and doing many other things, and he was cut down at a political appearance in Dallas. I've since been there and walked the route like a political saint, whom you trace to see who it was and how it could happen. You walk from every angle that you could. It changed America, and it showed us that there was a reality for those of us who dream and want to make things different, that there's a price to pay. Sometimes it's a small price, but the harder one commits, the worse it is. So JFK, across the years now, from 1963 when he was assassinated on this day to now, many of us still think of him and think of what could have been, the saddest words of song or pen, what could have been. So what do we have today? We have one of the fights that he fought reluctantly, resisting the Dixiecrats, even in Facebook. Facebook apparently has done a study and found that despite some of the things Facebook did to discourage racism, some pretty terrible things were said about the Squad and others that seems to resist their efforts. Now, some would be glad to shift the blame to Facebook, perhaps myself included, on another day. But there's a hard reality underneath the dialogue that we're having with Facebook about how do they control people. We have a racist America, 30 or 40%. For any opportunity that they think it's safe politically or socially, they jump out and say terrible things. There was a local 20180 group on Facebook here where I am in Northern Virginia. These people said the most horrible things, and they would go off attacking women, and men would attack them back, and people would just leave them alone. That's what Facebook is dealing with on a larger scale. That's what we're all dealing with on a larger scale. We have more bores and distasteful people who are out there doing terrible things and saying terrible things to other people and thinking that they're in the Wild West. So I am sympathetic to Facebook, and I am not sympathetic to having the government decide what Facebook may or may not put up, because I think that's closer to the Truth Ministry, the Ministry of Truth. It was called in 1984, which is to regulate the words we use and the stories we know about, the things we know, so that we can be better manipulated ourselves. In this category, they don't always know what they're doing, the manipulators. There were 13 Republicans that voted for what was billed as a bipartisan bill on infrastructure, in which I think 19 senators voted for it before it came to the House for a vote. And then 13 Republicans voted for it. And now the gang of jesters and thieves, miscreants, political felons want to get back at those Republicans who in a way, followed the lead of the Republicans in the Senate. And they want to punish them for doing what they did. Can you imagine? This is what America's become. In the South Bronx, we dealt with people like this occasionally. There'd be people who would just be stupid and aggressive and throw their weight around. And, we kind of dealt with it. I think we dealt with it better than adults do. We talked to the person. Somebody'd shove them. There weren't any weapons then, although that changed as I got older. But I didn't live in those neighborhoods anymore, so I wasn't exposed to it. But on a grander scale, we have these thugs pretending to be elected leaders. It's just not acceptable. So, when we have Getz and Green deciding who is right and wrong, you've got the wrong standards for sure. Finally, I've known a lot of Marines in my life, Semper Fi, and they have contributed tremendously in wars and in peacetime. And now I hear that 10,000 of them still haven't been vaccinated. It's just not acceptable because those of you who know anything about service, in such close quarters are these people. And frankly, if we need them, they're not any good to us if they're sick. So, the active services have been very good about the vaccines, but I'm surprised to hear this about the Marines because I think they're not only worthy, but they're smart and experienced and they know these things and they get like 100 vaccines when they go abroad anyhow. So is this a political statement or do they really believe that the medicine's not safe? We're in a troubling place in America. I wrote and spoke a podcast yesterday that basically said, under the 14th Amendment, the third section, that if you incite to riot and have taken an oath to be faithful to America, then you may not hold office again. You may not hold public office. We have senators and congresspeople who fit the bill. We have a former president who's going to try to get on the ballot across the country if he decides to run in 2024. There should be an objection to every one of them under that constitutional amendment that they may not serve because they betrayed their oath of office and been unfaithful and a traitor to the democracy, preferring an autocracy. So that's what I'm thinking on this chilly day. And I do have my trees around me, but as you can see, they can't block the wind the way they were in the leafy months of the year. So I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye-bye.